Okay, so here we are talking about our quadratic functions, and when we have our quadratic functions, the y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, we can determine a lot of parts of the function by looking at the a and the b and the c. So we talked about this already. I'm not going to go through this again. If you want, you can pause this and just read through it one more time. I'm going to go straight to the vertex because I want to focus in on the vertex. The vertex is going to help us determine where the symmetry is in our graph. So we know that the x value of the vertex can be determined by negative b over 2a. And when you know the value of the x value of the vertex, then we can calculate the y value by plugging it into the function. And here's an example. So if we have, let's take out this whole piece of paper. Whoops. Let's take out this whole piece of paper. If we have the function y equals negative x squared plus 2x minus 3, we can identify our a, b, and c. A, b, and c. We can know that our vertex is going to be this guy. We know that it's pointing down because it's a negative. So that means I'm going to do a smart graph because I know that most of my stuff is going to go this way. I have to identify my x value as 1 once I put in the negative b over 2a. And then I put that 1 back in. So I have negative 1 squared plus 2 times 1 minus 3. So when I do that math, I get negative 1 plus 2 minus 3. And that is going to get me negative 4 plus 2, which is negative 2. So that means my vertex is a point at 1, comma, negative 2. So I can actually graph that point, 1, comma, negative 2. And that's going to be my vertex. So that means since it's facing down, this parabola isn't going to cross the x-axis. Okay? So we have that information. Now I want to go one step further with you. There is the fact that this is going to cross the y-axis at negative 3. So I can go and say my y-intercept is negative 3. From there, I know that this thing is going to be symmetrical, but how can I find my extra points? And that's what this quick tutorial is going to be about. How do I find all those other points? Well, like some of your classmates said, this is very close to the idea of the absolute value graph. The absolute value graph was that V, and we had a vertex in the absolute value graph. So pause for a minute, this video, and see if you can just recall the absolute value graph while I move on. So the absolute value graph, we did something that looked like this. This was the math of the absolute value graph. We made a couple of columns. This is going to be our x column, our y column, and our point column. This here is going to go in here. So this is the math that we're going to do. Negative x squared plus 2x minus 3. And remember that with that absolute value equation, we put the vertex in the middle for the graph because we knew that the vertex, I'm going to zoom up on this a little bit more. We knew that the vertex was going to be in the middle of the graph. So I'm just going to simply put my vertex in here. I don't need to do the work because I already did it above. And the point for that vertex, like we said, is 1, comma, negative 2. So remember, this is the middle. Since this is the middle, we're going to go to the left and go to the right of our vertex. Well, we already know what this one is because this is going to be the y-intercept when x is 0. But let's just put it in anyway. So we have negative 0x squared, negative 0 squared plus 2 times 0 minus 3. And that's going to get me negative 3. And that's going to be my point. Now let's remember that we have symmetry, just like we did with the absolute value. We have symmetry here. So we don't even have to do the math on the 2. We can leave it alone, and we know that the math is going to be similar, exactly the same as this guy. So that's going to be negative 3. So my point is 2, negative 3. Now let's do the -1 or the 3, whichever one we want to do. I'm going to just do the -1, but be very, very careful. We have -1 squared plus 2 times -1 minus 3. I ran out of space. So -1 squared, that's -1 squared is 1, negative is -1 minus 2 minus 3. So -1 minus 2 minus 3. What is that? That's -6. So my point is going to be -1 comma -6. And again, I have my symmetry, so I don't have to do any math here. I can just simply put my -6, and I have my points. You may want to go back and revisit what I just did here, okay? And I want you to really, really pay attention to the symmetry around the vertex. Just like with our absolute value, we had the symmetry around the vertex. So let's go through and graph these points. So we already graphed this one right here. So now we're going to graph this one. And now we have 3 comma -6, so that's 3, -6, and -1, -6. And you can see that symmetry. It's this beautiful line of symmetry. We're going to talk about that in class on Monday and Tuesday. And then I go and I take my pencil and I have to sketch this curve because it's a curve. And I need to make sure that it looks like a curve. And this is the biggest difference with that absolute value, is that the absolute value is a beautiful straight line with a really hard V, but this isn't. This is a U. Okay, so I sketch it, and then I'm going to go in and do my best. It's a really nice curve. And that is how you graph a parabola when it's in this notation. So now I'm going to ask you to try the next one that I'm about to put up, but I want you to pause it. Once you've paused it, I'm going to give you the answers. So try that one. It is y equals x squared plus 2x minus 5. So pause it now, and I'm going to pull up the answer. Okay. So here is the answer to this. Again, I can do my ABCs. So I have this information here. I use that information to get my vertex. So my vertex is that. I know that it's going to be pointing up because my A value is positive. Lots of stuff going on here. Then I'm going to put my information into my chart, keeping my vertex in the middle, knowing that I'm going to do the easier math with my 0 and my 1. Once I do the easier math, I know that I have symmetry here, so I don't have to do any math in that section. And I don't have to do any math here because I've already done it up here. When all is said and done and we graph these points, we see this beautiful parabola. And like I said, I sketched it here, and then I'm going to do my best to go over my line. And I can't forget to put my arrows. And that, my friends, is what we have. So, from that information, you may need to watch this a couple of times, and you're going to try some on your own for homework.